All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's April 20th, 2022. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, which just means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team and showing them the ropes. So if that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format's informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by heading over to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. Our call today is recorded. A video recording of this session is going to be shared to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and want to support it, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. Just go over to youtube.com/cloudposse and subscribe. So with that said, let's get into some announcements that came across my inbox or newsreader this week. One of those was brought up by one of the engineers on our team. We have been really hoping that this experiment was going to eventually make its way into the core of Terraform. This is basically the ability to have optional parameters in maps, in variable maps. So the feature exists today as an experimental flag. Charlie, no. And with that flag, you can then be less verbose in passing arguments to your parameters and modules. Unfortunately, it's not looking too good. Apparently, Mart, one of the active community members and contributors to Terraform Core, said that the experiment is not going to graduate. They learned a lot from it, but they're going to re-implement it some other way. So for all of us holding our breath, we got to keep holding. Any questions on that? All right, the next announcement is, if you're like me, I got some notifications from Heroku that they have invalidated a number of OAuth tokens used with GitHub. I think Travis and or Heroku were compromised and some of those tokens have leaked. It was discovered because there was an increased level of reported accesses against NPM and other sources, and then they were able to identify that they were leaked. So these are the incidents here that are reported.
Were there any indications that those keys had been rotated at any decent amount of time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. It's also not clear to me if there were any severe supply chain attacks that weren't thwarted. So I haven't followed up on it.
Okay, just wondering.
Anybody know more about this one?
It's kind of a scary situation. I mean, there's so many little bits and bobs, little apps that you can install for GitHub, I've used the whip app for a long time. It's like if you say the letters whip in your PR title, it'll fail a status check, and you give it permission for things, and it's kind of a scary situation. Like so many of these little things have maybe more than they need.
It's not uncommon, which is what's scary.
Yeah, well, I think we should provide a guide on how to look at permissions that these OAuth modules have. Like to Anthony's point, I don't know how many I've authorized that might have more permissions than are needed.
And visibility into it. We have no idea really what's going on in the background with all these systems accessing it.
Well, see, the tricky part about transparency and OAuth is that the bad guys also now know the transparency about that OAuth.
Well, that is true if they've already breached it. Now, if it's immutable, at least, I mean, the record needs to exist somewhere. And if you're not on GitHub Enterprise, they make it pretty hard, I think, to really understand what's happening. And there's poor reporting on top of how your tokens are being used on GitHub. And
Yeah.
Although, I mean, yes, sort of. There is a GitHub audit log that you can actually, look at if you review it, but you have to review it.
But I guess it needs to go further than that, though. Some sort of anomaly detection, or
I think it
TMI as it
is. Goes back to the age-old adage: if a computer's plugged in, there's a chance.
Yeah, that is unfortunately what it reduces to. One of the interesting things I came across this week, it's nothing new, but it was the first time I recall seeing it, was a AWS data source to get pricing information. I think this is really interesting because if you think about how you want to construct your Terraform modules now, you can take pricing into account as a variable and use that to filter for products that meet, or for variations of a product, for example, instance types that meet those pricing requirements. Another inspirational post for those independent developers out there who want a career in open source, don't know how to get there, but aspire to have some projects. It is possible. Here is a interesting write-up that is pretty detailed, down to screenshots from his W2 on what he made from GitHub sponsors. Now, one of the key things that I think stood out to me is the number of sponsors that it took to get to this point. So as a ballpark figure, obviously everyone's tiers and sponsorship levels will vary, but he was able to do it with about 535 individuals sponsoring him.
Yeah, I don't know this person from a hole in the wall, but the one thing that I found strange was, why did he get a W-2 from GitHub for his sponsors and not a 1099?
No, but it's going to be on your W-2, your income.
Well, he could have incorporated.
Maybe,
Is that a W-2 or is it a 1099? I mean, those same boxes.
It's certainly not a W-2.
GitHub is
Well,
part
actually,
of
no.
the company.
Hang on.
That's
W2.
yeah,
That's a
this is
W-2.
That
I
is
was,
W2.
I was dubious about that GitHub withheld taxes on his behalf and all these other things. I don't know. I was just like,
The one thing is that this
Nice
thing that
of
he's
them.
mentioning here, this screenshot, is of his job at his last gig, which he was sharing before he
I
actually went
misunderstood.
into
I
all of the stuff he
misunderstood.
did for open source. So I think
My
that's
question
the
is,
confusion.
what did he make?
Makes sense.
What was the app?
He's at 9K a month, something like that. It was in there.
It's Livewire, or I think that's with the project card. It's like a PHP equivalent to
Glasswire?
like a webhooks thing. I don't know. I've been
It was a
application development for a
webhooks.
while.
It was a webhooks API, but like, how do you guys feel about people getting paid to update documentation? Because I'm looking at the M365 maps guy, and also other people that update Terraform and AWS, and this guy has an actual app, which I feel is fine getting paid to do, but like, I've seen a lot of GitHub subscriptions focused on updating documentation.
I mean, if we're talking weekend money, I'll do it.
We could use some help here at Cloud Posse, by the way. Definitely need help with documentation.
My answer to your question would be like, is it valuable to the community? And if so, then I have no problem like someone getting compensated to do that work. Like, it seems they're giving up their time, right?
Well, then
Docs
we
are
need
always definitely valuable. I'd be happy to help out. I just can't help out with helmfile because not that great with it.
Well, what we need to do is like per documentation, create a button on GitHub that says, I will pay you a coffee or a beer or whatever.
That's
and,
cool.
Yeah. And
Hey,
so like, it's a
Funny you
reverse
say that.
bounty. Yeah.
I have a button on my GitHub that says that you can buy me a beer. So
Yeah, it's just we need to make it more contextual to like when you're trying to get that one thing, right? Otherwise, you have to be searching out your profile and doing it.
Right.
Very
Like
true.
if you, yeah,
Very
if you
true.
were just to like post it on that one thing, then you could say like, look, I will do like a really good IPA on this one and like a Heineken on another one. Like,
So there's an open source
Hey.
project called JHipster that I've sponsored and followed for quite a while now.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, and they do Open Collective, I think is what they call it. But they will post, go to the issues, Eric. They'll post bounties for
I like that.
for issues. And so
That's
what you do is
interesting.
you write it up, you submit the pull request, you claim the bounty, and then you go over to Open Collective and they pay you out. So
Huh.
I could see this being something that gets picked up. This is the only place I've really ever seen it done, but I could definitely see this
Well,
getting
it's
picked
like
up
bug
for.
bounties. It's like bug bounties with hackers.
Yeah,
A
but
lot.
just
Yeah.
feature issues and stuff versus bugs.
Well,
That's
yeah,
really
yeah,
interesting. I like the idea.
Well,
What if,
Don,
Eric, for you,
I was gonna say make it a Stella, and I'll do it.
look, I'm trademarking it. So whiskey for docs is now going to become Stella for docs or Heineken for docs or, you know, Comfort,
A
but,
bottle of Johnny Walker, and consider all of your documentation done.
I'll be
Alright.
outsourcing all my work to Cloud Posse and making sure that they understand that I'm, you know, helping people get documentation. So yeah.
Just
Insatiated at the
depending
same
on
time.
how far of that Johnny Walker you've drank.
Matt, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say, I mean, with the community that Cloud Posse has, I feel like there is something in this realm for you in regards to docs, or, you know, the post was about creating videos to use his software and like releasing new features and stuff like that. And I mean, it might be completely out of your realm of interest, but there is something there for the fact that like, hey, if you were to create videos around using a particular module, and that's like part of a sponsorship to that, if you're a premium Cloud Posse sponsor, you can get those videos. I feel like that could be a revenue stream for you for sure. You definitely have a larger community, I would think.
Oh, and speaking of community, I feel really rude right now. My name's Brandon Miller. I am from Jacksonville, Florida. I am a consultant. I feel like all you guys know each other pretty well. So this is my second office hours. Very nice to meet you all.
Hey, good to meet you, Brandon. Good to meet you.
Thanks, guys.
Let's see. The next announcement was just a small one here. I'm excited about it. Security Hub launching cross-region aggregation of security scores and compliance statuses. This has been annoying because you had to dive in. If you know, there's 17 default regions. To see what your compliance score, you had to go into every single region to do that, which is ridiculous. Now you can roll those up into your aggregate region, and that makes Security Hub a little bit more valuable.
Now
if they'll just did that with billing.
Yeah. So now if they'll just come up with a way to deploy it in one spot and then click, you know, evaluate all my other regions and not have to deploy it in all 17 plus regions, that would be great.
Basically organizational Security Hub instead of
exactly.
Yeah.
Or even like the way you can now do like the multi-region like KMS keys, right? You deploy it in a region and then you set up replicas, quote unquote, in all the regions that you actually want it to be used in. Like you could just say, yes, please collect data in all these regions, and it would be done instead of all the nonsense we have to go through today.
I have a funny story about KMS keys. When I was first learning Terraform, I didn't realize that they didn't just delete. Like you had to wait for KMS keys to delete. I don't know if it's that way now.
Yeah, I think so still.
It's that way on purpose. So You don't accidentally delete a key and can't decrypt things.
Yeah, there was an unfathomable amount of KMS keys just sitting in there. I don't know if you have to pay for them. Hopefully not, but it was bad. It was bad. There were a lot.
Remember how KMS keys are billed?
I think it's $1 per key per month.
Okay, yeah. So I probably spent about $100 that month.
Okay. Yeah, $1 per month. So not crazy, but lesson learned.
That's one of the AWS prices of
At least you didn't do that with
somehow.
ACM or PCA rather. That would have been painful.
No,
Hundreds of PCAs would have been a $40,000 bill or something.
I did it with GKE. That was the one that was the most expensive for me.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. So the next minor announcement is that you can now officially say you're using SSO in your HIPAA organization, even though you were already using it probably. And now it is certified.
HIPAA as in healthcare HIPAA?
Yes.
Yeah, we should do a round of applause for that. Thank you.
That is what my consulting is all around. Healthcare.
Wait, are they also saying they're PCI compliant? Is that also with this announcement?
Looks like it also achieved that already. It looks like that was
a while ago.
It wasn't a while ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
That's gonna drive a lot of healthcare over to AWS. I already know a few who have been waiting for this information exactly.
Yeah, that's good news for our customers as well. Another announcement was just AWS Shield has come up with automatic mitigation, integrating with AWS WAF to modify rules to mitigate certain kinds of attacks. Sounds cool. Don't know how effective it is or practical it is. Obviously, your Terraform will have drifted then as those mitigations are applied.
Yeah, it actually applies them to the ALB like ingress rules, which I think is pretty cool how that works.
That is cool.
I have a question for you guys. Are obviously, very cloud proficient. As far as WAF goes on, say something like AWS, what would be a benefit over something like, I don't know, pfSense, Untangle, any of those?
Self-managed versus AWS managed would be the main one, right? pfSense being an EC2 box you got to spin up and manage in the lifecycle of. pfSense is also, I believe, written in PHP. Need I say more? And
yeah, I shouldn't have even mentioned pfSense. That's a bad one. That's a very bad one.
There's enterprise ones like F5 or something, but
yeah,
I mean, it's build
that
versus buy kind of thing.
Insane expensive from what I've heard, but
Shield and WAF also at their higher tiers give you access to teams at AWS, very dedicated teams whose whole job is to deal with security and DDoSes and attacks, and that is pretty awesome. There are multiple public blog posts from different companies that were like, so we got attacked and we subscribed to this and we got this team of super engineers and this is what they did for us. I highly recommend Googling for those and reading them.
That's the point for me, because I don't even know how to begin to start dealing with a DDoS attack.
We use Cloudflare where I'm at, and they're a little bit less pricey than AWS.
Well, okay, Cloudflare, yeah, they know how to. I'm saying, like, personally, I wouldn't know where to begin.
Yeah. Well, no, but Cloudflare is a good alternative.
Vlad, do you know what what kind of spend do you have to be at for you to start getting that kind of stuff? Because I mean, one of the things I think that is so many people don't get when they move to cloud is like, oh, we're going to save money by moving to cloud. No, that's not the point. You don't move to cloud to save money. You move to cloud to, get all the benefits of cloud. Like,
well, you can actually move to the
cost
cloud
might
and
be
spend
one, but yeah.
you can move to the cloud and spend a lot more money if you don't go managed.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I
when
think
it comes to the DDoS protection, the main thing that you want to guard against, the main strategy for DDoS is bandwidth and compute, which is to say, like, you have n gigabits coming in. If you've got like one instance running, like, on a gigabit NIC, right? You're not gonna be able to write it out. You just don't have the bandwidth for it. So what these hosting providers do, like AWS and Cloudflare, is they front load you that bandwidth because they have multiple 10 gigabit, 20 gigabit pipes, right? And they're able to process traffic and perform the filtering that you need in order to, because otherwise you just shut down the port, right? The other strategy is to just null route your assets.
Right.
If you want to apply filtering, which these companies are going to give you, you have to be able to process all that data, or just black hole the site, right?
Yeah,
so those are your two main options there, and that's why you have to go to a managed service provider, because they have the resource to be able to handle all that for you.
I just got 10 gig and I thought I was amazing. And you said 20 gig, and now I'm like, oh, okay. I've got another 20 years to go.
I think the other interesting thing, Jim, with that is that they also have carrier relationships. So, like, for an example, if I've been part of a pretty large DDoS attack at one point where they were able to, like, narrow down that the traffic was all coming from, like, Chinacom in, like, at an LA peering point, and they were able to reach out to the peering point and basically get them to null route the traffic there, so it didn't saturate backhaul links into the geo that I was in, and a bunch of that other stuff. So the large providers have all the NOC contacts and things that they need to sort of, like, work with their peers to get rid of these things. And they also engage the FBI to help them at that point too, which was another interesting point. And the FBI was pretty, because of the size of the attack, they were pretty interested in where it was coming from and where it originated and all that. They have a lot of tools to help mitigate that stuff as well.
I actually have a funny story. I won't go into it, but I home lab a lot, and something very similar happened to me.
All right. Well, in the interest of time, I want to get through a couple last more announcements and then dive into the Q&A. We have some folks that were waiting patiently last week. I feel so bad we didn't get to them. So we'll get to those here in 5 minutes. One announcement that came from Anton Babenko's newsletter, which is really nice. If you haven't yet subscribed to weekly.tf, this is Anton's taste of Terraform and what catches his eye. One of the interesting articles there was a pretty thorough write-up on using Terraform with GitHub Actions and OIDC for AWS. I haven't gone through all the details. I don't think he handles, the situation of what to do with plan files. He does talk about using a glorious Terraform module by Cloud Posse for Terraform state backends. But aside from that, check it out.
For what it's worth, we'll probably be open sourcing some stuff around this soon, since we just implemented this for our own internal use.
That's true.
As well. So we'll probably have some good examples coming up shortly.
Yeah. Matt himself working on some of that stuff.
Self promotion.
So there's a project I'd never heard of. It's called Hierarchical, I guess short for hierarchy. It's a Go library for hierarchical YAML configurations. And there was a Terraform provider implemented for this that I came across recently. Okay, this one was old, but there was a re-implementation of it. Somebody else forked it. This one here, Hierarchical 5.
I was going to say, you're taking me back to my puppet days.
Or taking you to the future. All good things are cyclical, fashion and infrastructure included. So I don't know. The reason why I'm excited about it isn't that we are going to use it. It's just validation to me a little bit. This is what we do with all of our stack configurations at Cloud Posse. We have these hierarchical configurations. And it's getting more and more popular as I see other solutions implementing hierarchical configurations. Maybe not YAML, maybe HCL, maybe.
If you haven't checked it out yet, I literally just heard of this today. It's called Earthly.
Yes, yeah. Earthly for CI.
Yeah, it kind of blew my mind just the way that it works, but yeah, just throwing it out there if you haven't heard of it yet.
Yeah, I think it'd be an interesting thing to do something on. It's come up before, but we haven't really gone deep on it. It's another interesting pattern that's evolving with Earthly. Is kind of abstract away the common elements of what it is to be CI and CD, and then just pop that into whatever system you use, so that you can, so that it's CI and CD. What's the word I'm looking for?
Agnostic.
Agnostic. Thank you. No, agnostic.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, for me, one of the pain points when I was learning CI and CD was that I had to actually deploy to test my CI and CD. And
yep, that's
to
true.
be able to just do that locally is like, that's a godsend for anybody trying to learn.
Yeah, it is interesting. You know, as our CI and CD pipelines are getting more and more complicated, we need to be able to have automated tests for those as well. Now, you were talking about just developing and testing it, which is one point, but taking that a step further, having automated tests for your CI workflow is, I think, something we need to start doing.
Yep.
Test-driven design, right?
Awesome things.
Yeah.
Yep. There we go.
So
there's a lot of awesome things in the pipeline.
I found a decent solution to. I mean, I've spent 5 minutes looking at Earthly, and I think it looks cool too, and I want to look at it more. But like my CI pipe right now is make build. Like
build.
If it's already all abstracted into your make file, you can run that locally. I mean, I think it's probably got stuff in it that, you know, is very interesting, but I don't know. I don't have a burning desire to do more than just make build or whatever.
About a year ago, I had a plan to use Please, and then I forgot about it.
What's Please? I'm not familiar with that.
Look it up. Please, I think it's CICD.
I think that's going to be a hard one to search for. Everyone's begging, please, CICD work.
Yeah,
right.
Please help me. It's written in Go. I know it's written in Go.
If you can look it up and share it in the chat, that'd be cool. I always want to keep everything on my radar.
I don't want to waste any more of your time.
The last thing was just some interesting observation we had this past week. Matt, you were accessing something on S3, and you got a rare look at an actual stack trace coming out of S3. You know, Amazon does a good job to mask all of those, so you don't really see the underlying errors. We must have hit a instance in some sort of a debug mode or something. And this leaked some interesting information, including that S3 is based on an old version of Apache Tomcat, and also that they are using Java, obviously.
Yeah, and their the release version of that, it was from like December, so I'm sure they're behind on some patch revs that have some CVEs in them, I'm sure. But what it turned out to be, which was interesting, I couldn't get out of this mode. I kept getting request header is too large, and it turned out to be that I ended up somehow with a malformed cookie from S3, and I had to like clear all my S3 cookies before this stopped happening.
All right, CVE researchers, there you go. There's the hook.
Yeah.
Go get your bounty.
Well, I hear malformed cookie, and I'm thinking like XSRF possibilities.
Among other things. Yeah.
So it worked in a different browser on my machine, which is why it led me to believe that something was something was up with my session, and I logged out and logged in, and it kept happening. And then I realized I should have taken a snapshot of what my cookies were, but I didn't. I just wanted it to work, so I cleared my cookies, and then it started working. So who knows?
That happened to me with the Unity 3D website about 3 weeks ago.
All right. Unity 3D. I'm not familiar with.
Video game engine.
Oh, gotcha. So let's move into the Q&A. The first question, I'll just be selfish. I'm going to jump the queue here. One of the things that was suggested at one point, and kind of curious, is if Cloud Posse ran maybe a monthly activation day. Activation day is a term Amazon uses for onboarding, customers onto some technology or process. This would be for Cloud Posse's toolchain, things like Atmos and possibly Spacelift. And maybe we could arrange, complimentary monthly opportunity for folks to get up and running on the stack. Probably like a 4-hour session over Zoom, helping people, get up and running on the toolchain. Anybody interested in something like that?
Please, yes, sign me up. Do you guys have any possible paid consultation for an extra couple hours as well?
We don't right now. We tried that a number of years ago, and it was a difficult thing to scale for the amount of interruptions.
I can see that, yeah.
It took. So right now we're still not doing that, but yeah, I wouldn't rule it out indefinitely.
Well, maybe one day I'll just work for you guys and we get all the experience I need.
Yeah, just email jobs@cloudposse.com and get in the pipeline. That'd be awesome.
Gotcha.
All right. First question, Denise, are you on the line today? You were asking in office hours if we were going to be covering some questions from last week.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hi, Eric. Hi, all.
So let me load up your original question here. And that did not work. I must have shared your profile instead of your question.
It was a really long question, so I can explain my situation if you prefer.
Is this the question here, though? Basically, a Git repo structure recommended for separating your Terraform modules in a repository?
Yeah, but actually, it's like this. We worked in the past with a consultancy firm, and they set us up a Terragrant-based architecture. It was in a single repository, both the modules and all different Terragrant configurations. We decided to separate it to sub repositories, like all apps go to a separate repository, and the common infrastructure code and the common Terragrant file stays in the common repository, in the infrastructure repository. My question is how can I work peacefully with Terragrant in a distributed architecture, in distributed repositories, if I want to refer to some common modules like the VPC or the ALB, etc.
Yeah, this is a great question. I think Matt Calhoun is going to be the SME on this one, having worked with Terragrant for many years. So Matt, you want to take this one?
Sure. Although I don't really think what you asked is a Terragrant question. It's more of just a Terraform question. So if you have stacks that are, sort of spread out all over the place from where you're instantiating them. So I assume you mean like you're deploying an app and you need the VPC ID or something along those lines in order to deploy your app, something. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think in that case, your best bet is to use some sort of data sources that look that information up when you can. That would be your first choice. Like look up whatever you need by using a data source, and then your second your second choice would be to use some sort of remote state if you don't have that. So like some way to actually look up from that centralized remote state, look up the VPC ID. I mean, VPC, you can definitely use a data source for, but there isn't a data source for everything. So in the case where you don't have a data source, then you have to resort to using, basically using like remote state from another module to look it up. So I think Eric is dropping some links of how we do it in the Cloud Posse methodology of how to do it.
Brings up a question for me. I extensively use mono repos. Yeah, I know that sends shivers up a lot of people's spines. I'm sorry. I always use an S3 bucket for my state. Is that a good thing to always do, or are there some places where it would be better to put certain things in other places?
I mean, if you've chosen S3 for your state, which we do, like you determining how to break up your state is sort of the question. But I don't think you should mix and match state backends unless you have a really good reason to do so. All I was saying is, like, if you need a VPC ID, there's a data source for VPC. So you can actually use a data source that says, look up the VPC that's in this account, or that has these tags, or that matches this criteria. And then you can, you get back the VPC ID from that. You don't actually have to go to remote state to get that information. And then if you can't use a data source, then drop down to using remote state to look it up. And I think that would be the same whether you're using TerraGrunt, or regular old Terraform. It would be the same.
I need to look at TerraGrunt. I have not used it yet, and I've heard great things.
Yeah, you should look at a tool like TerraGrunt at least. I mean, if you're using Terraform and trying to do anything, Terraform by itself isn't enough. And there's like 10 alternatives right now for that. TerraGrunt being the original kind of tool to abstract away some of the configuration complexity with Terraform.
Got you. I've recently heard of Pulumi. I've just been
which is an alternative, right? So that is like CDK or total different. Technically, Pulumi can call Terraform, but you don't do that as a primary use case.
But we don't do that here.
Well, doesn't Pulumi under the hood use Terraform?
I think not anymore.
Not anymore.
Originally they did, but now they're actually using the native SDK for most of their stuff.
I didn't know that. I always thought it was just kind of a wrapper on top of Terraform.
In my clusters, I use I always forget the name, Crossplane. And I do think that they do use Terraform under the hood.
Don't know enough about Crossplane. We want to have them on the show sometime.
They are fantastic. I'm sorry if anybody has any feelings otherwise, but I love them.
That's cool. So to what extent are you using Crossplane, at what scale and how long?
So my extent, like I said, I'm a consultant. So the amount that I actually get to learn the things that I want to learn, few and far between. But I've got about a year under my belt with just Kubernetes, vanilla, and Helm. And then for the past 3 months or so, I've been experimenting with Crossplane and all the newer kind of stuff. I really, really want to look into cluster API. That I really want to look into that. That looks so fun.
Okay, well, keep your eyes out. We've been talking with the folks at Crossplane. Just stalled out just recently, but we'll get them on here and talk more about it. Let's see. I
Absolutely.
think you have the next question on my list here, Brandon. Are there any examples on the use of Helm file that showcase how one might use it in a bigger situation?
Okay, so before I get laughed at here, let me explain the situation that was going on. I was on the Helm website looking for the documentation that would explain to me how I can override templates. And then all of a sudden, this magical Slack appears on the bottom right of my screen. It's like, hey, there's free questions if anybody wants to ask. And FOMO kicked in, and I was like, I might not find it here. And so I asked the question.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is the interesting thing with Helm file is it is like the Swiss Army knife for how to do things with Helm. It's kind of born out of 1,001 use cases, and everyone's PR is meaningful and gets merged. So it's there. I think the ways you can do it are plentiful, and it seems no two companies are doing it the same way.
Yeah,
Cloud
I was going to say
Posse,
that.
yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say the one thing I am going to adamantly stick to is that it is the Wild West. I have not seen two Helm files that look the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think it's a result of honestly it then embracing templating, which we were big backers of also as well, that the Helm file itself is a template, almost like a make file is itself a template that first gets pre-processed and then evaluated as YAML.
Oh, the make file.
Yes.
No,
so
but I don't say that as a bad thing. It just really confused me as a noob.
So I'd be curious what, I think Helm file serves a wonderful purpose at a certain stage of a company or type of architecture. I would see more these days. It's been replaced frequently by alternatives like Argo CD and Flux.
Yep.
So the utility is a little bit mitigated. And what is nicer about using the tools like Argo CD and Flux is that they converge on your desired state, and they are synchronizing it with the cluster. Versus Helm file, if it fails, okay, great. What are you going to do? That's up to you now.
Yeah.
But Argo CD solves that.
Yep.
So,
and that was kind of my last question is, I do plan on using Argo CD. So should I even be attempting this at all?
Yeah.
The one thing I thought of after that is local dev.
Local dev. And by the way, what is it that spins up Argo CD? It's not Argo CD. So you can use Helm file to provision Argo CD, for example.
That's true. Yeah, that is very true. Yeah.
In our case, we use Terraform to do it, because we're basically consolidating on Terraform and Helm and Argo CD. Helm file plays a role in some situations. We are also maybe reintroducing Helm file due to gaps in the Terraform Helm provider, but that's a stopgap.
So you guys at Cloud Posse have kind of moved from Helm file to Argo CD, it sounds like.
Yes and no.
A couple of edge cases.
Argo CD predominantly for continuously delivered applications that the customer manages and uses. The issue is that both with Helm, the problem with Helm file, and Argo CD and Flux is the same, is that it's not everything you need to deploy your application. You still need service account roles. You still need IAM policies. You still need S3 buckets and backing services and SSM parameter, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why it turns out for many things that just using Terraform and baking it into a module that does everything we need to deploy a service in the cluster works out better. I think,
well, Helm, at least from what I've read, like it doesn't sync. It doesn't keep, it doesn't keep, and I could be wrong, but I don't think it synchronizes your state.
No, it's an imperative one and done kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
why Helm diff exists, which kind of shows you the difference in state between where, what is there now and where you want to go. So you can get the workflow similar to you get with Terraform, where you see a diff before or a plan before you apply. The difference is that it doesn't actually take that plan and apply it. It just reruns it, and anything could have changed in the time between.
I was about to say, you could have left work and
something else went through. Yeah.
I gotta say, since moving jobs, at my old job, it was we did a lot of helmfile. Thanks and big thanks to being active here on office hours and stuff and learning about it. And when I switched, everything's Flux, and I've been super happy with it.
What do you think about Flux committing the state back into version control, which is the major difference between Flux and Argo? I haven't yet embraced that. It seems weird to me, but
I thought that Argo was version control.
We don't do it.
You did disable that. Oh, okay.
We have a strict one way only.
Oh, okay.
Kind of thing, because if you when you imperatively deploy things, meaning you're telling helmfile or Helm or whatever, I want you to deploy this thing on this cluster. Your CI engine, whatever it is, GitHub Actions or Jenkins or whatever, needs access to that cluster, and it needs a lot of access usually. Like it needs
administrative
admin.
level, more or less.
That's
one of the enormous reasons why we've basically standardized everything onto Flux, other than the deployment of Flux, is the cluster pulls everything in, and you do not ever have to give your Jenkins or whatever you're using access to your clusters.
That's true.
Which can help with
that's what
attacks.
They coined a good term for this at Weaveworks, which we've been using, immutability firewall. And I like that conceptually, that you have your version control serves as your immutability firewall. Everything has to go through your version control in order to make a change.
Yeah. I think one of the bigger prevailing kind of not issues, but just what a lot of people have been concerned about around Kubernetes in general is security.
Yeah, it's a wild, wild west for Kubernetes security. It's very much often implemented in a walled garden kind of way.
Hey, thank you for explaining me to a T.
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting better. There's, most of my work is in government, so it's government mandates, which are not always super great, but like now you've got the CISA, which Cloud Information Security Agency or something, has a hardening guide for Kubernetes. There's Kubernetes STIG security technical implementation guides specific to Kubernetes now. So, I mean, it's getting better for sure.
Believe it or not, I have a background in security, but Kubernetes is a different beast. It's just a different beast. There's layers upon layers of networking as opposed to, just the couple of layers of networking we're used to.
I mean, it's the way the whole industry's gone, though. I mean, you can't just be a sysadmin anymore or whatever. You're a DevOps engineer.
It doesn't work.
There's so much more.
So my last company, we were early adopters of Kubernetes, but we actually abandoned it and went back to like ECS and AWS and all that because it was such a nightmare. And I'm back at another company and we're toying with the idea of going back to Kubernetes because I'm like, I just don't know. I hear different stories from people of how much of a nightmare it is, and some people are really happy with it. So
Depends on the organization.
I would say it depends on whether or not you manage the control plane. If you don't manage the control plane, Kubernetes is not that difficult. If you have to manage the control plane, however, that does get to be rather cumbersome. It's kind of a pain in the rear end. But Kubernetes itself is really not it's a pain in the, there's kind of a high barrier to entry in some aspects of it. And then I would also probably say that the other issue is that not every use case requires Kubernetes. You really have to evaluate what you want to try to accomplish with what Kubernetes provides. And if you have a small software stack and you run a really simple application on 3 hard, bare metal machines or whatever, you probably don't need the overhead of having Kubernetes. But if you're running an enterprise system and you have a lot of stuff that you have running where you have a lot of scaling needs to be done and you want to have good, strong reliability, Kubernetes is probably a really good thing to use for something like that. But I don't recommend it for all cases.
Do you do any consulting?
It's hard. It's hard to steer away from it though. Like every GitHub, everybody's got this tie into your Kubernetes cluster, and it's like it's just in your face everywhere.
Yeah, and my main complaint for things like, and I'm going to probably go out on an edge here because people aren't going to agree with this, but I'm going to say it anyways. One of my biggest complaints with technologies is everybody is really happy trying to play with the new shiny toy. And then they take the new shiny toy and they put it in production and then they end up finding out like, what the crap was I thinking? And really,
and then they switch job and leave everyone else managing.
No, that's exactly right.
Right.
Everybody's writing everything in Go. Python was the big thing a long time ago. But, I remember looking at Python 15 years ago, people were basically writing shell scripts with Python. It's like, dude, you should have just wrote a shell script. You could have had the thing written in 5 minutes versus the 2 days it probably took to write in Python. Like, people don't evaluate what the right tool is for the right project anymore. And it's
15 years ago, I would have not have said Python. I don't think I would have said 15 years ago, probably not Python. Probably
Ruby.
Yeah.
Ruby. Yeah. It was.
PHP.
Yes.
Actually, I hate that. Ruby's my favorite language, and I can back it up. But anyways, the point is that but even Ruby, like it doesn't really matter the technology. The point is that I don't know why this is, but some people, they don't evaluate what the right tool is for the right job, and that's really the high point. Like, look, Kubernetes might not be the right thing. Maybe it's better to use a Docker container environment. Maybe you shouldn't do, you have to put thought into it. That's hard. That's a hard thing to do.
Well, back to Kubernetes in and of itself being hard, I don't agree with that sentiment. I agree that it's just a lot to learn, and people tend to think a lot to learn means hard. Yeah. That's not the case.
And I didn't say hard. I said high barrier to entry. That's all I said.
Yeah. I think that my
did, but yes, that is true. High barrier to entry.
Yeah.
Go on, Matt.
So my view of Kubernetes is that Kubernetes itself should be considered a cloud, right?
Yeah,
so
it's software-defined data center. It's exactly what it is. SDD, what it is.
So if you think about it that way, like you'll treat it the right way. It's like saying, like, I'm going to go to some other cloud provider. And you're like, you don't just do that willy-nilly. Like, you have to think about, I have to learn it. I have to know how to operate it. I have to know how to monitor it. I need to know how to secure it. I need to know how to get logs out of it. Like, there's a million different things there that you need to do. And if you don't think through it that way, it's no different than if you said, I'm going to move from AWS to Google and Google Cloud, and we're going to just spin stuff on and expect it to work. Like, I think the problem is that because it's so buzzword heavy and everyone in the industry talks about it and everything else, no one views it that way. But if everyone viewed it that way, they would realize what it means to adopt Kubernetes.
I think it's for the meticulous programmer. It's for the person who likes to be meticulous about the way that they like to configure their things, which is me.
I gave that up a long time ago. 20 years in this industry, I'm happy with somebody else managing my stuff if I can have them.
Tell me about it. I've been in it for 25 and I'm right there with you. I mean, if it costs less to have someone else manage it, man, yeah, dude, do it. It's you. It's on you.
Dude, I started when I was 12. I'm 29. it's been a while, and I still have not lost the itch to do things my way, because I don't know, I'm just one of those people, I guess.
Yeah, it's pretty common in engineering, nonetheless. I have
Yeah.
to say. Well, we are out of time for today. I do want to wrap things up on that note. Thanks everyone for the engaging conversation today. We didn't get through all the questions. I think we had touched on the last two questions a little bit last week. We still didn't get to them. We'll cover them again next week.
I talk a lot.
The more the merrier. So if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, go to youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, that's youtube.com/cloudposse. I like to connect with everyone in our community. Head over to linkedin.com/in/Osterman. Again, that's linkedin.com/in/Osterman, and look forward to connecting with you. We're also sending out our newsletter now. It includes a lot of the topics that we have in our office hours. So if you can't attend, you can at least stay on top of all the interesting announcements that we have. Thanks, everyone. See you all next week. Same time, same place.
Absolutely.
Bye.
You.
Everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
It was nice to meet you all. Bye.
Yeah, nice to meet you.